Hello, good evening. I'm wearing this shirt. This is given to me by my kids. It's got this bear on it, the Santa Claus hat, and I tell my kids, "Oh, do I look like Santa Claus to you?" And they're like, "Yeah, you do." My name is Dr. Asitar Bear. I'm a professor of economics and teacher of meditation, and do this class each week. This is Introduction to Heart Rhythm Meditation. Heart Rhythm Meditation is a kind of meditation that comes out of Sufism, specifically the Sufism of Hazrat Nayat Khan, who was an Indian mystic who taught in Europe and the United States in the early 20th century. That's my particular lineage. Lots of different kinds of meditation and spiritual practice that come from Sufism. So I'm not claiming to represent the entire tradition here. This is just one particular kind of meditation that's worked very well for me. I've been practicing it and teaching it for a long time. Um, I've practiced in many different things over the years. I grew up with meditation. So it's been a lifelong journey for me. Um, so the basics of this method, you start by taking a very upright posture. All right. So you want your back to be straight, but you also want to be relaxed. So it's a you're doing two things at once here, right? We want to be relaxed but energized. A lot of times when we're energized, it's because we're putting out energy, right? We're doing something. So meditation, we want to not be putting out energy, right? We want to be in an energetic place, but we want that energy to be able to go within, right? For self development, for replenishment, for inspiration, for all these things, right? When we put energy out, that's important, right? I mean, we spend most of our day doing that. But we're meditation is different, right? This is a time to replenish yourself. So we but we don't want to be asleep either, right? I mean, that's important too. That's rest. If you get too relaxed, right? If you get kind of horizontal like this, right? Your body is like, oh, sleep time now, right? So we want to send a signal to ourselves, right? Physiologically, but also mentally, emotionally, that this is a time to be energetic, even though we're not moving, right? Even though we're closing our eyes. Okay, so if you'll notice, I'm sitting on this regular, office chair, but see how my back is not touching it, right? That feels important to me. You can use a different style chair, like I have one in back there. You can see it. Um, that's the different. I usually sit in chairs. I've done a lot of sitting on floors and meditation benches and things. Um, but there's a lot of benefit to being in a posture that is not going to be too difficult for you physically, right? So a lot of the seated postures, depending on your level of flexibility and your comfort, sitting on a floor, on a mat, or whatever, um, it can be physically demanding. It's common to have like one or both feet fall asleep, right? So um, over time, I just have found that it's better not to do that, right? It is better to, you want your entire body to be energized. If something falls asleep, obviously that's a sign, right, that it's not getting adequate blood flow. And, all these things are connected, right? So blood, energy, right? All these things, you don't want a part of your body to be cut off from that. That's not, um, I mean, sometimes that has a purpose or whatever, but for you're just getting into meditation, it can be quite distracting if you're physically uncomfortable, right? We would like to be comfortable in the sense that what you're doing is not causing you pain every moment, right? But we don't want to be so comfortable that we'll like fall asleep, right? Because that's not what meditation is, right? Meditation is not sleep. It should feel relaxing, it should feel energizing, but it has a different purpose, right? So now once we have that posture down, right, and just get your posture together so you're ready. Um, the next thing we want to do is get quiet We'll go within and begin to tune in to the breath, right? So we want to make 5 interventions in the breath. We want to make the breath deep. Okay, so that means breathing in and out and feeling your belly expand. Okay, this is called diaphragmatic breathing or abdominal breathing. You want to feel your belly expanding as you breathe in and contracting, getting smaller as you breathe out. All right. So you can take one or both of your hands and just place them on your belly, right, as a physical reminder to breathe down in your belly. A lot of us, we get a habit of breathing shallowly, breathing irregularly, breathing up in the chest. This is called thoracic breathing. That sends a signal to your body that, okay, this is not a time to relax. This is a time to, get into, like physiological arousal. Like it sends that fight or flight signal to your brain, to your entire nervous system. So we want to do the opposite of that, right? We want to send the relax and chill signal, right? And by breathing down in the belly, in order to do that, you have to relax your abdominal muscles, right? And that, the abdominal muscles are like armor over your internal organs, right? It's what keeps your trunk upright. So, by sitting up straight and not having any back support, there is going to be a certain amount that your abdominal muscles are activated, right? They're not totally relaxed. But, relax as much as you can, right? Relax those abdominal muscles as much as you can, given that you're upright. Okay, so let's just try this. Place one or both hands on your belly, and let's just do some breathing, deep breathing. All right. And as you take these breaths, just feel as much of the tension draining out of your upper body. Start at the very top of your head. And especially as you breathe out, just release the tension that you're holding. Notice which side of your body, is it the front or the back, feels more tense. Okay. So if your back is feeling a little more tense, lean back a little bit, right? It's probably because you're leaning too far forward. If your front is feeling a little more tense, well, maybe it's because you're leaning back a little bit, right? So there's a balance point that you can find where you feel like you're just right in alignment, okay? And try to find that and then just breathe, let that tension drain away. By breathing deep in the belly, by having our hands on our belly as well, um, we're moving our energy down lower into our body. All right. The It's easy when we do a lot of mental activity, a lot of mental energy, as many of us do. It's quite easy to have your energy be high, to be focused around your eyes, around your head. Uh, by letting it sink down, you get slower, you get more relaxed. You might be feeling that. And you might notice that it's very easy and very natural to move into the next phase of our breathing, which is to make the breath slower. Normally, we breathe maybe 20 or 25 breaths a minute. Slow down the breath. By slowing down the breath, you're slowing down one of your primary internal clocks. And again, you're sending the signal to your body, to your mind, to your emotions, all of that, that it's time to relax, to let down your guard, to become vulnerable, to become open to your inner world and your inner experience, to all that we put aside when we're engaged with the outer world, to explore and to nourish the more subtle parts of yourself. So the next part we want to add to this is to make the breath rhythmic, meaning the same length inhalation as the exhalation. The two halves of the breath, the two parts of the breath are even in rhythm, same length, same intensity. Um, and also to make the breath heart centered. All right. So that is to focus the breath on your physical, emotional, your spiritual heart center, the heart chakra. All right. That's the energetic center that holds all of the other ones in its embrace. All right. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, because by doing that, you are energizing yourself at an incredibly fundamental level, right? You are exploring yourself and you're also giving yourself the energy that you need to take the next step of your development, whatever that is. Very, very powerful thing to do, right? So a couple of parts to it, right? The first part, we want to just take the attitude that our breath, the energy of the breath, is coming into your the center of your heart, right? That the energy of your heart is taking in the energy of breath, right? Now, of course, there's different parts to the breath, right? There's the part that is the kind of most obvious, right? That's the flow of air. Now, the flow of air obviously is not going to be going here. It's going to be going through your nostrils, right? You're breathing in through your nose. So but that's not the part that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the energy part, right? The energy of the breath goes wherever you focus on it, right? So, if I say to you, breathe through your hands, well, obviously, the air is coming through your nose, but you're feeling that the flow of energy going through your hands. That works, right? That actually has real effects. You can measure the effects of that. Um, so we want the energy part to feel like it's coming into your heart, right? Your heart is being revitalized by the inhalation, which is also called inspiration, right? That's the medical term for breathing in. um, and as you breathe out, you're expressing, you're radiating the energy of your heart and your being, expanding your being. All right. So now the way that we can make it both heart centered and rhythmic, right? These two parts of the breath that we want to make an intervention on is by feeling the beats of the heart, by counting those beats and making it the same length on the inhalation as it is on the exhalation. So, for example, 8 beats in, 8 beats out. All right. You might want to put your palm on your chest to help you sense that. Or alternatively, you could place your fingertips and just press them on your breastbone. Whichever of these that you find works for you. Try one or the other. It's very natural to sense your heartbeat as you're sitting quietly. Some people have a natural affinity for it or can hear it very clearly, can feel it very clearly. Others, maybe not. It might take some time, it might take some practice to feel it. But if you're not feeling it, you have kind of an idea of how fast your heart is going, right? If you're not feeling it, use your imagination, all right? Just fill it in, all right? Maybe you feel a beat or two here or there, and that's enough, right? Just imagine that you're feeling a heartbeat if you can't really feel it, right? That's okay. Don't feel bad about it. It's not a time to feel bad. Life's hard enough, right? So, um, You can lightly press with your fingertips, and maybe you feel the pulse in your fingertips. Um, so sit with that for a little while, and just feel the breath and the heartbeat in rhythm together. And the final step here is to make the breath full. All right. So make the breath full by breathing out more than you normally would, a lot more. You squeeze your abdominal muscles on the exhalation. You slow your breathing down, breathe all the way out. And then you keep the breath under control and breathe all the way in. All right. Okay, we'll end our little session there, practice session there. This class, I always start at the beginning every week. So if you're totally new to meditation, that's totally fine, right? So I like to start with just going over the basics, but there's a lot to the basics, right? So if you don't feel like you're getting all that, then and this is your first time or whatever, or maybe it's your 10th class, I don't know, right? But you might still feel like you're not getting it. That's okay. That's honest, right? I mean, because the stuff that I'm saying to do, I know I sound like, oh, just do this. It's not easy. It's hard. It is a very difficult to change your breathing, right? Our breathing has an unconscious pattern to it. Um, and we're not used to really paying attention to it. Um, and so our minds wander. We think about other stuff, and then we're not doing the breathing, right? Um, that's incredibly common. I mean, that's learning meditation, basically, right? That's how common it is. So maybe you're like me, a perfectionist who thinks that you can do everything perfectly on the first shot, and then you find that's not true, as I have many times, right? Um, that's okay, right? That's okay. This stuff takes time to learn, and I'm telling you it as if you can, easily put it together and do it all. Maybe you can. That's great. I do have a whole course where I go through it incredibly slowly and very step by step, adding one piece at a time, which is available on my Patreon page. If you guys are interested, that's available to all my patrons. If you'd like to support the show, what I do here, class, and also, get access to a bunch of other materials, you can check that out. The link is in the description. Um, meditation it's a skill like anything else, right? So it's dependent on how much you practice it, right? um, and how often you practice it. You want to be building on those skills, right? um, i have I started this myself when I was quite young. um, I started meditating, you know more intensely or on a daily basis, like when I was a teenager. Um, and I've been doing it ever since. I have, periods where I do much more intense practice, like a retreat. Um, Sometimes I'll do like a challenge period. I did one of those, like I did like a 6 week period where I, challenged myself to like sit a certain number of hours each day and whatever. So you don't have to practice to the crazy level that I do in order to be good at it. It's kind of like what is it? What do you come to meditation for? Right? What is it that you What is it that you want? What is it that you're looking for? What is it that you need? Um, and it's part of the process that answers that might change as you go through the journey, right? It's going to change. I'll say that, right? Um, but we all have some reason for what we do. It's good to be try to be conscious about that, right? Try to come in with a clear intention if you can. All right. Now, I've spoken a lot about you know m- meditation's a skill like lots of other skills, like picking up an exercise routine or learning a martial art or learning an instrument, right? In fact, I feel like this particular method, because it's so much about rhythm, right? The breath and the heart in rhythm. That there's a lot of similarities actually to music. So what we want to do is we want to retrain the breath so that to breathe in the manner that I've described, right? Deep in your belly, slowly, heart centered, rhythmic, and full, so that that becomes something that's regulated more by your unconscious, right? That you can do that, and then you don't have to pay attention to it every moment, right? You will still maintain that rhythm even if your mind is occupied by something else, right? So, well, what would your mind be occupied with? Well, we want to add certain focus of concentration to the practice, right? That is the basic thing that I've gone over with, okay, you have your posture, you do this with your breathing, right? The five things I mentioned. Um, that's like the foundation, okay? That's the base. Now, how we tune that, right? What we're using it for, well, that depends on the situation, right? That depends on what we need in the moment, right? What we're working on. It depends on all these things, right? What is the energy that we want to bring out in ourselves right now, right? Um, so a lot of what I do here, because this is the basics, right? This is the just trying to get the good, solid foundation, right? If you have that, that's going to be a tremendous benefit to you, in a lot of different ways, right? That provides a solid foundation. Okay. Um, but then where do we go with that, right? What are we trying to do? What are we here for? Okay. Um, Now, if you guys have a specific thing you want to ask me or whatever, feel free to do that at any point, right? Even if it doesn't seem to be in line with what I'm talking about, that's okay. Um, I'd be happy to answer questions or whatever. But I did come with a kind of theme in mind, right? Because I'm dealing with my own things, right? I mean, and I want to be honest about that, authentic about that. We I guess we have this kind of idea, about I don't know, somebody who is like a spiritual person or whatever, right? A meditation teacher, that this is somebody who has it all figured out, um, who has achieved enlightenment and now share the wisdom with you, that sort of thing. Um, you know, this is it's like it's both true and untrue. I mean, um, you well, you should have, first of all, you should have some extraordinary experiences, right? That should happen, because meditation, it offers that promise. There are some absolutely mind-blowing, world-shaking experiences to be had in your inner world. Um, these experiences are different for everyone, right? And yet there's an incredible underlying similarity, right? Um, so I've talked at some length in previous classes about the state of unity, right? That feeling of oneness, that feeling of the infinite, the eternal, the perfect, right? The unlimited. That is a very universal type of experience I see it in people who speak and write about meditation from many, many different cultures, right? Um, and you feel it, right? You feel, no matter if the words that they use to express it are different, right? Um, because right, we all express ourselves differently, um, but there's an underlying, kind of universal quality to that, right? Because unity is the nature of reality, and that's, we can tap into that, right, anytime we want. um, or let's say it's not always easy to get to that state, right, but we it's who we are, right, it's what we are. So there's a certain thing that makes sense then, that lots and lots of people would have that similar kind of experience, right? So there is some kind of extraordinary thing here, right? But on the other hand, I mean, look, we're all very limited, very flawed human beings, right? Nobody really has it figured out. So even though, like I said, right, partly true, partly not, there is this kind of extraordinary, um, you know, uh, thing that can happen, right? And every like real teacher, every has that. You feel it in them, you see it in them, you have some sense of it. um, and yet everyone has their own struggle, everyone has their own pain. um, if you haven't struggled, then I don't know what to say, right? I mean, that the nature of life is struggle. um, so you've been very lucky, I guess, right? Or don't worry, struggle is coming. um, And so meditation has a way of bringing you very much in touch with this struggle, whatever it is, right? So we have to be honest about that, right? We don't want it to make it seem like, oh, yes, just meditate and all of your problems will melt away and, you'll be shooting rainbows out of your eyes, right? That's, um, so, there are experiences that are so incredible that, it does feel like, okay, this is something very different than my ordinary state. But your ordinary state's going to come back, right? Your difficulties, problems, challenges, everything, right? That's not going to go away. I mean, you can see it in a different way, right? It's going to feel, you might feel so expanded that you might kind of just laugh at, the things that you thought were stressful, right? Um, but the things change from moment to moment. Okay, so um, uh, oh, let's see. I see. I have a little comment here from Theo C. Do you incorporate the heart rhythm meditation with a vipassana practice, or is it a separate type of meditation? That's a good question. Um, these are practices which come out of different philosophical traditions. But what is meant by vipassana? Vipassana is mindfulness, or what is often called. Um, and it comes out of Buddhism. It comes out of a certain set of sutras, a certain set of teachings, right, which says the foundation is to be aware of yourself, right, or to watch yourself. And so this is like what mindfulness is. Usually it's a little hard to characterize because there's a lot of different teachers of it, and they teach it in different ways. But I would say the main hallmarks of it are accepting the accepting where you are, right? Having an attitude of acceptance, um, and allowing sense, focusing on physical sensation, some sort, allowing the feelings to arise and pass, right? Um, so if that's pretty broad, right? I mean, there's usually not a whole lot of technique in there in the sense that I'm talking about, right? Like you do this particular thing with your breath. Usually they do not emphasize that, right? Um, some teachers are going to be focused more on a posture and others less so. Like if you see a group of people doing Vipassana practice, they're not necessarily all sitting in the same way, right? Um, it's tended to not be as emphasized, at least in my interpretation. Again, there's a lot of different teachers in this tradition, so it's a little hard to characterize. Um, so I think of that as a kind of a philosophical outlook. It's a little bit minimal to me as a method. So yeah, like if I go to like a vipassana practice or something like this, I've done heart rhythm meditation for so long that it's my base, and there's no really changing that. Like when I breathe, is it going to be in tune with my heartbeat? Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really is, right? Unless I'm just totally not aware of it. But if I'm sitting in a meditation, then yeah, I'm going to be doing that. That's become my foundation. It would actually be very difficult for me to do something else, right? Um, because that's the training that I've gone through for decades, right? Um, Sometimes it's good to work against that and try other things and whatever. I've done that. And so, I will, okay, I'm trying not to do the thing that I'm good at, right? And do this other thing. Um, what I found is that it's a very versatile base, like, um, can you do, a mindfulness type practice while keeping your breath rhythmic and all this stuff? Yeah, right. You can. Um, it's quite good for that, like if you're working on acceptance, you're working on just letting the feelings come through you. Well, that's an excellent way to do it, right? Because by making the breath deep and slow and rhythmic and heart centered and full and all these things, right? Um, you give yourself a kind of strength, where you don't feel. I mean, the issue, right, when you're feeling a lot of difficult stuff, is that it could get overwhelming, um, and then you want to stop doing, the thing that has brought it up, right? That you want to stop doing meditation, um, on some level, maybe you want to stop right there and then, or maybe you want to stop and you want to kind of get away from the intensity, right? um, Now that's okay, that can be part of the process, but sometimes you want to go through it, right? Sometimes you want to let it flow. um, and I'm not here to judge you, right? So whatever you're the best judge, um, whatever feels right to you. But when you have that, when the breath has power, when that foundation is strong, you have the option, right? You have the option to stay with it, right? And sometimes, I mean, at least in my experience, that can be very, very powerful, right? Um, that when something comes up and you see it all the way through to a point of transformation where you feel very different, um, that has a lot of value. Um, so like I said, but I think it's a pretty versatile foundation, but it does come out of a different philosophy or a different philosophical tradition. Um, and I don't want to get too much into that because I think it kind of doesn't matter that much on some level. Um, the different methods and whatever different traditions come from, they have different teachings and whatever. But in a grand sense, everyone has the same goal, right? Because where do you go with this, right? Like every spiritual tradition describes, maybe in slightly different language, but they describe unity. Maybe they describe it as emptiness, right? Maybe they describe it as infinite potential. Maybe they describe, there's a lot of different ways of describing that. But unity is unity, like however you describe it, you're talking about the same thing. um, all right, so I will say, well, let's do it before I talk more. Let's just do another little session of practice so that we, you know, work on this a little bit more. All right. So take your upright posture, tune into your breath. Want to make the breath deep, slow, rhythmic, heart centered, and full. Tune into your heartbeat. Now focus on the energy of your breath. Focus on that. entering your heart as you breathe in. And really try to focus on the emotional content of this, okay? Feel like you are receiving energy, you're receiving life, you're receiving vitality, and just get into the precious sacred gift that is the breath. We would perish without it, right? Just feel that. What is it to receive that incredible gift that we mostly just ignore, right? We mostly just take that for granted, like we do with so many of the gifts that we receive. Here is this incredible essence of life that we are taking in every breath, and just drink that in. Notice that that's happening. Feel your heart come alive as you breathe into your heart. As you breathe out, send the breath down deep into your heart. Let it radiate throughout your body. Let your breath purify yourself. Let your breath cast away all impurities, all distortions, all the energy that is stuck, that is stifled, that is stale, everything that you no longer need. It is literally true that as you breathe out, you are breathing out particles, right? You're breathing out a mix of different elements, molecules, right? That in the form of a gaseous form, right? Your cells are exchanging energy with every breath. As you breathe in, you're receiving. As you breathe out, you're giving. And now let's key into this energy in a very specific kind of form. Let's give it a certain name. Let's call it love. When you breathe in, your heart is receiving love. And when you breathe out, your heart is giving love. And just sit with that. What does that mean to you? What does that make you think of? What does it make you feel? I'll tell you, for me, it often feels like a struggle. When I tune into that infinite flow of love, I'll tell you, I often don't feel like I deserve it. I often feel I'm not worthy of it. But of course, love is not a prize that is given out when you're worthy or deserving or whatever, is it? Love does not work that way. And so I know it is only my own self, my own self-imposed, limitations and obstacles, and my inability to receive that, or my my limiting that flow. Sometimes I think of that line where they say, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. Love cares not whether you're worthy or unworthy. Love is not something you earn, it's a gift. We need to feel that, right? It's our nature. It's what we're made of. It's our hearts love, that's their nature. It's what they are. And we want to experience that in all the ways that we can, right? We look for that in another person. And it's wonderful, when we find that in another person, an intimate relationship, a friend, a parent, a child, all the different kinds of relationships, all the different ways that love can manifest. But our hearts want more than that. Our hearts long for more. They long for a love that is unlimited and unbounded, a love that is unconditional. How often do we find that, right? I mean, it's an ideal. By making the breath powerful, by making the breath full, making it rhythmic, making it slow, keying into the nature of the breath as love. We have the opportunity to experience that in a very different way. And you might find it touches your heart. All right. So we'll end our little session there. I'll talk a little bit more about the back to the philosophy. We want the point of developing a philosophy is to have some way of understanding the experiences of meditation, right? Um, Now, why is that important? Why does it matter? Um, Understanding is for your mind, right? That's what the mind likes to understand things. Um, so sometimes in the past, I mean, like by talking philosophy, I'm doing a certain style of teaching. There are teachers that don't do any philosophy. You just practice, right? Um, and it's actually more difficult. It's a more difficult style because your mind always wants to know, why are we doing this, right? Why are we doing this? So the philosophy is like an attempt to answer that, right? To say, okay, mind, right? Here's, you can get on board with me, right? Stop fighting me. Here's why we're doing this, right? This is the philosophy. Um, you know, uh, there's more to experience. Maybe that works for you, right? Maybe say, I want to experience something I've never experienced before, and people say all these things about meditation. I want to experience something new, right? Um, okay, right? So, well, you have, now you might be tested in that resolve, right? You might be like, I thought this would happen a lot quicker. I've been meditating for a minute. How come nothing extraordinary has happened? You might be, whatever reason you come in with, you're going to be tested, right? Because that's life, Meditation is not different from life, right? It's just an activity, right? Um, okay, so the philosophy is like, so that your mind can be on board, right? And the things that I've given you as part of this method, right? Focus your mind on your breath, right? And focus it on to certain concepts, right? Like, okay, in the last practice, right? Last exercise, your 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 focus on the breath as giving, as receiving, right? As love. So you have to hold that in mind, right? But also you want to not just keep it in your mind, but try to feel it in your heart, right? Um, so this is why I say it's like music, right? Okay, so I don't know if you guys play an instrument or whatever, even if you don't, right? I think you can probably hear when music has feeling in it, right? Because you can play a set of notes, right? You can play a set of notes, but if it doesn't have that feeling, it doesn't have that emotional content, it's not really alive, It doesn't feel right. You have to not just play the notes or whatever you're doing, right, to produce that music. You have to also get into the feeling of it. If you're not in the feeling of it, um, you've only just begun, right? That's the thing. You got to get into the vibe. That's what this is. All right. And meditation is the same way, right? You have to be able to apply the notes, right? So there's a certain amount of technique that's necessary here, right? But you want to get into the feeling of it, and that feeling of it will carry you along, right? So this is the transition from what we call concentration, right? Focusing the mind to contemplation, getting into the flow of it. All right. Um, Now, I said I would talk a little bit about, my own personal, journey with meditation. I always struggle with this because I'm like, I teach because I want to be helpful, right? I'm not doing this is not like my own kind of therapy or whatever, right? I have a therapist, it's not you guys, you guys are here to learn meditation, right? So I'm like, I don't want to burden you with stuff that's not necessary, right? Um, but I also want to be authentic, right? I mean, like I've said, hey, like everyone has struggles, everyone has challenges. There's like you might be thinking, well, do tell, right? What are you dealing with? So, my big central kind of challenge in my life, the thing that my own pressing need is um, comes out of this traumatic break that I had with my father, my stepmother, my school of meditation, what I had uh, left my career as a tenured professor. I left my post and gone to build this nonprofit founded by my father, my stepmother, who were my teachers, right? Um, Now I've had a number of different teachers over the years, so they're not my only teachers, but I certainly took that on, right? And I want to build this school with you, right? Um, and there's a lot of sacrifices that went into that, right? And I spent 5 years doing this, really giving my life to it. And I thought this is all I will do. I'll never do another thing. I'll certainly never go back to being a professor. Um, and well, we had a parting of the ways. Um, Very difficult. I don't want to get into all the details of it. I don't want there to be any recrimination about it. It just happened. Let's not say it was anybody's fault. It was like there's plenty of blame to go around if you would want to do it that way, but I don't think that matters that much, right? For me, it's like it was a very deep trauma and just shattering thing that happened, and it left me feeling grief and anger, and now that's a very deep kind of sadness, um, that I'm trying to put those pieces together, that I felt so hurt and traumatized by what happened that a part of me said, I never want to do that, right? I you know, and a lot of it comes out as like, um, I don't want to be, like I said, a fake kind of teacher, right? I don't want to be somebody who, um, puts on an act and makes it say, "Oh, look at this big muckety muck," this type of thing, right? Very, very common in spiritual circles, right? Um, to have a kind of, to have a kind of an act. Um, I mean, have a personality is in a sense an act, right? So you kind of can't not have that, right? But you, there's levels to this stuff, right? And so I'm like, I just cannot bear the thought of that being inauthentic. I mean, it's like what I want to say is I don't want somebody else to get hurt the way I was hurt, right? I mean, that's um, which is quite a thing to say, like as if one can control this, right? You can't. Um, but that's like where I'm coming from at the moment emotionally, right? Um, that meditation is so important to me, but also connects me to the most painful moment or most painful period, most painful event of my adult life by far. Like nothing else comes close. Um, so it's a struggle for me to be here as a teacher. I mean, of course, I hope it's useful, right? I hope that you all are gaining something from this. Um, and so it is a tremendous struggle for me just to figure out how to be in this situation, right? And to be real, to reflect the incredible nature of like what meditation is, the incredible promise of it, right? um, and also to be real about um, what it is for me now, what it has been, and so on. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm talking so vaguely these guys aren't following me. I don't know. That's the difficulty of this. I know I said a lot of general kind of stuff. Um, but I want to just be honest, about um, what am I struggling with, as because like I said, we everyone comes to this with a certain thing in mind, right, for a reason. um, all right, so let's do one last session here and just work on some of the themes that we've worked on so far in the class, right? Uh, so take your upright posture again and tune into your breath. Feel the energy of your heart as you breathe in. Your heart is receiving that energy, inspiration, love. As you breathe out, you are radiating that energy, expressing yourself on a very fundamental level, giving and receiving. Work on making the breath more full. Use your abdominal muscles. We're looking for the muscles of that regulate your breathing to be working smoothly, to be breathing slowly. We want our breath to be quiet. We want our breath to be at once very powerful and very subtle. keeping your breath quiet, not letting there be any intentional restrictions. So opening your throat, your nasal passages, all of that, allowing the breath to flow, but controlling that flow. And may you feel that energy and inspiration in your heart, that love, that joy, that wonder at being alive. And is there pain there? Is there sadness there? Is there other emotions that we might think of as negative? Yes, it's all in the mix. When you really get into feeling, it's not so easy to label what feeling is, right? It's like a lake of energy. Now, there's different currents in a lake, right? There, you might feel a warm current or a cool current when you're swimming in a lake, um, but it's all water, right? It's all mixed together, and so you might feel some of that as you dive into the energy of your heart. All right. Well, we'll end our session there. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm here every week. Hope to sit with you again sometime in the future. Take care.